Friends, happy Monday, 28th of June. Pray you're doing well. Today we celebrate the memorial of Saint Irenaeus of Lyon. Saint Irenaeus would have died in 202. He was a student of Polycarp of Smyrna, which is in what was Asia Minor, now is Turkey. Polycarp was a student of John the Apostle. So these are people that lived long periods of time. Kind of like how, there were people at the Civil War that were alive at the Revolutionary War. There were people at World War II that were alive at the Civil War, right? Those things that connect us to American history. Likewise, Polycarp would have been one of those who would have been, 3-4 generations removed from Jesus and a witness. Polycarp was a writer. He was a bishop as well. Polycarp, dang it. Irenaeus. Irenaeus was a bishop and a writer. And so some of the best preserved Christian writings from the 2nd century come from Irenaeus, including a book Against the Heresies, where he especially writes about, deviant Christian sorts of understanding in the 2nd century. Really gives us a good historical model. Have you ever heard the example of the Christian passing along is like taking a ball of clay, so malleable, and everybody in a line kind of takes it and puts their hand in it, and everybody does their best to preserve it, but they also change it with every generation? That's a little bit of an image for Irenaeus. He helped us to understand in the 2nd century how it is that the Christian Bible needed to include both the First Testament and the Second Testament, right? The Hebrew Bible and the Christian Bible. He's the one that gives that coherent understanding and rationalization that's going to be picked up across later generations. He's the one who provides the coherent understanding of how this Christian message is meant for the entire world and not just for, specific select groups. So Irenaeus especially kind of put his hands on that ball of clay, doing his best to preserve what he understood, but also trying to help others to understand why it made sense as he passed it along to succeeding generations. So that's St. Irenaeus. Sorry, that's probably more than I need to get into, but that ball of clay, I think, might be helpful for us in understanding the reading today too. So I'll give you a reflection on the readings, and then I'll invite you to read the readings, and hopefully I'll be done. First reading, we have Abraham talking to God about the sins of Sodom and Gomorrah and bargaining God down. We aren't going to hear the next part of it tomorrow, because tomorrow we're going to celebrate the feast of St. Peter and St. Paul. But if you want to go ahead and read ahead, I give you permission. Read about the sin of Sodom and Gomorrah, the sins against hospitality, the sins of sexual violence. This section of this story of Abraham is one of those that really piques the interest, right? God tells Abraham, the sins of Sodom and Gomorrah are so great, I have to investigate. The cries rise aloud to heaven. And so a lot of folks, contemporary Christians, they ask, what's the sin of Sodom? And they might immediately think the English word sodomy, or homosexual behavior. If you look at the biblical witness, we don't hear anything here of what the sin is. Jeremiah and Isaiah talk about sins of pride, sins of oppression of the poor, a refusal to change. Jesus, when he castigates Capernaum and other cities, calling them like Sodom and Gomorrah, he refers to their lack of change, their hardness of heart. Different writers, Old Testament, New Testament, and then in the Christian dispensation, find different rationales for what the sin of Sodom and Gomorrah is. It's a little bit of that, passing on from generation to generation and seeing the imprints of the different preoccupations that different ages have with wondering what this sin of Sodom and Gomorrah is. I'll just leave it here. Please notice that this is a sin of a community. And as Abraham bargains God down from 50 just people down to 10, that there is this understanding, which is radically different from our own, where we think that I am personally holy, I am individualistically righteous, and that's enough. But we're seeing here that our systems, we're seeing here that our community and the world in which we swim is part of how we're interacting and engaging with God. And even though there might be 10 righteous people in these cities, that still there is some expectation in a biblical worldview that you rise together and you sink together. This is one of those hard images for us 21st century modern Americans to really appreciate, that it is our participation in the larger world that affects us as well. Maybe if we're feeling brave today as we reflect on these cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, we might simply pray that the Lord would help us to open our eyes, that we might see the things about us, but especially the things about our world that we are still called to resist, the things that we are called to turn away from, and to invite others to walk with us in the dispensation of God. So let me give you a bit of a reflection on that gospel, and then I'll let you go. But foxes have dens, and birds of the air have nests, right? We hear two excuses for why people can't follow Jesus. One is that, he needs maybe a bit of comfort. And the second one is a very biblical reason, right? I need to go bury the dead. The only way that I can understand this is that Jesus understood, right? That maybe these people had been associated with Jesus for a bit. Maybe Jesus understood their particular weaknesses for why they would not be able or willing to completely follow after him. The question we want to ask always is, what's my favorite excuse that keeps me from walking down that road? What's the biggest thing that keeps me from opening my heart and surrendering myself into God? For plenty of us, it's that control. For others, it might be safety, security, comfort. For others, it might be, the good opinions of others. What is it that keeps us from completely following after Jesus? Maybe we just have that conversation, acknowledge it, and offer it to the Lord as well today. All right. May the Lord find us as a community ready for him. May we be willing and able to follow after the Lord. Click that link, read those readings if you haven't yet. And especially let's be praying that the Lord's guidance and protection might be, especially with people that are struggling and suffering these days. God bless, friends.